and welcome back to Cooking by Zoe. Here is the long-awaited tutorial requested by many of my followers on Facebook and my subscribers on YouTube. This is the ultimate tutorial on how I make an 8-inch vanilla sponge fruitcake. I will be using my vanilla sponge cupcake recipe in order to make this cake. You can use any of my sponge cupcake recipe to make an 8-inch cake. All the little clips that I'm showing are just examples of sponge fruitcakes that I have made in the last few months. Please know I will not be going into great details on how to make the batter for this cake. I'm using the same recipe and technique as I would make any of my sponge cupcakes, so please check out those tutorials. I will link them down below. To make the cake batter in a large bowl, mix in your egg yolks, granulated sugar, vanilla extract, milk, I'm using whole milk, and vegetable oil. Mix these together till well combined. Add in the baking powder and the cake flour. I will make sure to link down the ingredients down below in the description box. Mix these together until well combined, and then we will proceed with the next step to make our meringue. To make the meringue, you're going to whisk 5 egg whites, and then once it starts to foam, you're going to add in your granulated sugar, and then you're going to increase the speed and keep whisking this until you get a stiff peak. And what I mean by stiff peak is something that looks like this when you remove your whisk and grab a little bit of the cream, and you'll see the stiff peak at the very tip. Now we're going to add our meringue into our batter just like this. Fold and add in the meringue. Do not overmix your batter. Next, we're going to prep our baking pan with parchment paper and some oil. So I'm spraying a little oil on, and I'm adding my parchment paper. I already measure and pre-cut the bottom and the sides of the pan so it fits almost exactly. This will help removing the cake from the pan a lot easier, and that way there is no cake being stuck on the pan. So place your parchment paper on the pan and then add a little bit oil over that parchment paper, and then we will go ahead and add in our batter to the pan. I have 2 8-inch pans prepped, and we're going to divide the batter in halves. So you'll need a scale to ensure that you have the same or almost the same amount of batter in each baking pan. The approximate amount of batter in each pan should be approximately 325 grams, plus or minus by a few grams, because my measurements are in weight, they're in cups. So, I don't always get the same amount, but it should be close to 325 grams of batter in each of these pans. Once your oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, add in both of the baking pan, and we're going to bake them for 17 minutes. While our cake is being baked, we're going to go ahead and cut all of our fruits into our desired amount of decoration we want, and dice up all the fruits that we want to add to our filling. This is just an example of how I like to cut my strawberries for decoration purposes. After 17 minutes, we are going to check on our cake to ensure that it is baked and cooked thoroughly. And once it is, you'll remove it from the heat and allow it to cool for 4 hours before you start decorating. It's important to allow the cake to cool in the baking pan for at least 30 minutes to an hour before removing it. And then once you remove the cake from the pan, you want to ensure that you allow enough time for it to cool as well. Sponge cupcakes tend to be really soft, moist, fluffy, so we don't want to work with a very hot cake or one that has not cooled completely, because when we add any of our fruits, then it's going to cause a big dent on our cake. Here are the 2 layers of the cake. They have been rested for 4 hours, so we are now ready to decorate our cake. And if you want to trim off some of that golden color from the cake, you can. Prepare and make your whipped cream. I will link the ingredients down below and the tutorial as well. There are several equipments or supplies that you'll need in order to decorate your cake, but you can always improvise on what you have at home. I have my turntable and then my piping tips in the piping bag already with cream in. This is piping tip 789. This is piping tip 1M. I will be using an offset spatula, a stainless steel icing smoother for the edges and to smooth out my cream. And then I'll be using the icing smoother comb with design. And this comb has two design and I'm using the top design. I already washed and cut all of my fruits that I'll be adding to the top or to decorate my cake. And then I've also diced up some fruits and those will be added to the filling of the cake between the layers. I'm using a 12-inch cake board. I added the first layer of cake on top of the cake board and I'm going to add 1.5 to 2 cups of whipped cream. And then using the offset spatula, I'm going to evenly spread the cream all over the first layer of this cake. And then once that is done, I'm going to use the 1M piping tip and squeeze some cream around the edges 2 times so I have 2 layers on top of each other. I'm adding in my diced fruits, and this is about 2.5 cups of diced fruit. Add more if you like, but not too much where it's too heavy on the cake. Now I'm going to go in with the 1M piping tip and I'm going to squeeze on some whipped cream. And this is about 1.5 cup of whipped cream. And using the offset spatula, I'm going to spread the cream and try to do an even amount on top. Now we're going to add in our second layer of the cake, and then using the offset spatula, I'm going to turn the table with my left hand, with my right hand. I'm going to give this a quick push, squeezing in and filling in all the gaps where the fruits are, ensuring there's no fruit sticking out on the side of the cake. Next, we're going to cover our cake with a good layer of whipped cream. So I'm using this piping tip 789 and with a good pressure control on my right hand while turning the table on the left hand, I'm going to add an even layer around the entire cake just like how I just showed in the video. Using the stainless steel icing smoother, we're going to smooth out the cake. Now this doesn't need to be perfect because we're going to use the icing smoother comb to decorate the edges. And the top doesn't have to be perfect because this cake is going to be covered with fruits on top. But we still want to have a clean cake. So we're going to try to smooth out the edges. I'm using this icing comb to create a beautiful design on the side of the cake. Continue until you get a really nice clean look. Alright, just like this. With a stainless steel icing smoother, I'll just try to smooth out the edges that the cream was left out there using the comb. And then now with the 1M piping tip, I'm going to pipe out these rosetta on the edges of the cake and make sure you're using good pressure control while pressing down. You're turning with your right hand as well. And then down at the edges of the bottom of the cake, I'll be doing rosetta and some stars just like this. Okay, so we are now reaching the ultimate best part that I enjoy the most of making a cake is decorating the cake. So this is how I decorate my fruit cakes, or at least this fruit cake, and these are canned peaches. I kind of made a star design with that, and then I'm adding some kiwi in front of it, and then I'll be adding some strawberries, and lots of fruits will be added to the top layer of my cake. This is how I like to decorate this specific design, and then for the mangoes, this is what I like to do, kind of turn them and so it kind of looks, look like it's a flower. This is just, an example of something you like to try. Okay, and then there goes the strawberries that I've cut up, and I'll just be adding more fruits. I'll also be adding some fruits at the edges at the bottom of the cake. You can decorate your cake however you like with whatever fruits you want. I tend to not like to decorate my cake with cantaloupe, honeydew, especially watermelon, but if that's something you want to do, that's up to you. You definitely want to eat that cake sooner than later if you're adding those type of fruits. Adding this type of fruits, your cake is still good for a few days in the refrigerator. So continue watching if you want to see the end result of this cake. I hope this tutorial is helpful and answers some of you who have questions about how to use the cupcake recipe to make a cake. I hope this has answered your questions. If you have more questions, comment down below and I'll try to answer those. Thank you for tuning in to Cooking by Zoe. Have a nice day.